these calls from the constituents. Dana, and they're telling me this stuff is happening. Dana, would you like to ask me questions and then let me answer them, or would you like to debate me on these topics? I noticed that when you had Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, you gave them multiple choice answers to the questions that you asked, and you allowed them to answer the questions. I'm happy to be here to talk about policy, but if you're going to interrupt me every single time that I open my mouth, then why am I even doing this? So please ask a question, and I'd ask you to be polite enough to let me answer it.
Yes, I am, and I think that...
Can I make just one more final point about this, Dana?
Yes, please.
You've heard a lot of the media focusing on every possible distraction from the story in Springfield. You've heard them focus on these Proud Boys marches. You've heard just in this interview, Dana, the suggestion that because some psychopath is calling it a bomb threat, somehow we have to then ignore 40,000 Springfieldians who are having their lives worsened by Kamala Harris's policies. Well, what is the implication, Dana? I actually love to have this conversation right now live on air.
Right.
What is the implication when you say you calling out these problems has caused a bomb threat? You accused me of causing a bomb threat. Doesn't that mean you should shut up about the residents of Springfield? Don't you realize you're engaged in basic propaganda to silence the concerns of American citizens?
I was quoting the actual mayor.
Boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. I got to tell you guys, I really think this Haitian migrant story out of Springfield, Ohio, is the biggest gift to the Trump campaign that we've seen in a long time. And part of the reason why, honestly, the main reason, is because of the mainstream liberal media. They cannot help themselves when it comes to their over-the-top coverage of everything that Trump says, right? But what they don't realize is that they're bringing attention to a story that really highlights the future of this country if Kamala Harris is elected president again. Something that a lot of people in the Midwest, a lot of people in the South, a lot of people in rural America are not going to be comfortable with, okay? And you know that there's a major disconnect here between the East Coast liberal elite and the Holly weirdos, because you have these people out here boohooing and crying racism over the fact that people are concerned about migrants, whether they're Haitian, Venezuelan, Nicaraguan, Indian, wherever, right? Wherever they're from, okay? Taking over their small towns. They're saying, no, you're a racist, okay? If you're concerned about this, you're a bigot, and you should welcome them with open arms.
Springfield has had a large influx of Haitian immigrants. During the Biden administration, there have been more jobs that opened up, more manufacturing jobs, more plants, factories that needed employees. Our demand in Springfield for additional labor met up with the supply of additional Haitian immigrants, and here we are. You might imagine there are some challenges with, integrating a new population, new language, new culture, new dietary preferences, all kinds of reasons why there might be growing pains. But the bottom line is these people came to Springfield because there were jobs for them and they were willing to work. They will assimilate and integrate in time, but it takes time. So I think all of us need to have the same kind of grace that we would want our ancestors to have when they moved here, with our Haitian brothers and sisters who move here too. And nobody's eating cats. Nobody's eating dogs. How about we love one another?
Yeah, so it seems to me that Democrats just can't help themselves, right? Every time they try to convince us that, no, we're not the same party of slavery, of Jim Crow, of segregate. No, we're not that party, okay? We're not them. They seem to convince us that they are them, okay? Because basically what they're saying is that, well, you guys need to be okay with this because they're our new slave labor, right? They're here to pick our cotton, to work in the fields, right? To do all the things that we don't want to do, okay? Again, kind of sounds familiar to me, right? Seems like Democrats are getting back to their roots, okay? That's what it sounds like to me. right? But again, you're not supposed to question it, okay? If you question it, then you're racist. But that brings me to this interview here between Dana Bash and JD Vance, in which it's going to get pretty heated because Dana Bash is going to treat JD Vance in a way that she never would Kamala Harris or Tim Walz or any Democrat. And JD Vance rightfully calls her out for this and sets her straight on this issue. So without further ado, let's get into it.
The mayor of Springfield, Ohio, Rob Rue, said, quote, all these federal politicians that have negatively spun our city, they need to know they're hurting our city. And it was their words that did it. Before Donald Trump talked about eating dogs and cats on a debate stage, it was you, Senator, who first elevated this baseless rumor. These are your constituents. So why are you putting them at risk by continuing to spread claims about Haitian immigrants, despite officials in your state saying that there's no evidence and pleading for you to stop?
Well, Dana, first of all, what's putting the residents of Springfield at risk, which was a town completely ignored by the American media until Donald Trump and I started surfacing some of these concerns, is that they can't afford housing, they can't afford health care. The schools have been overwhelmed, the hospitals have been overwhelmed, and they're overwhelmed because Kamala Harris allowed 20,000 Haitian migrants to get dropped into a small Ohio town of about 40,000 people, and it's completely overwhelmed the services. Now, you ask, why have I talked about some of the things that I've been talking about? Let me just say this. My constituents have brought approximately a dozen separate concerns to me. 10 of them are verifiable and confirmable, and a couple of them I talk about because my constituents are telling me firsthand that they're seeing these things. So I have two options, Dana. I can ignore them, which is what the American media has done for years to this community, or I can actually talk about what people are telling me. And of course, many of the things that the media says are completely baseless have since been confirmed. For example, I was told, Dana, that by the American media that it was baseless that migrants were capturing the geese from the local park pond and eating them. And yet there are 911 calls from well before this ever became a viral sensation of people complaining about that exact thing happening. So my attitude is listen to my constituents. Sometimes they're going to say things that people don't like, but they're saying things that people don't like because their town has been overwhelmed, and it's my job to try to fight for them and to protect them. Kamala Harris opened the border, and now these people are suffering. That's what I'm focused on, Dana.
Senator, I have to go through several things that you just said. First of all, the Clark County Sheriff and the Ohio Department of Natural Resources reviewed 11 months of 911 calls. They only identified 2 instances of people alleging Haitians were taking geese out of parks. They found 0 evidence to substantiate those claims. Also, other evidence that you have talked about, even you've retweeted alleged evidence, are unsourced social media videos from a different city, apparently no connection to Haitians. And this is from a conservative activist who offered a $5,000 reward for such things. And then going just backly to the schools and the hospitals and so forth being overwhelmed, nobody is disputing that the town of Springfield, Ohio, needs help. But you're not just a bystander, you're the senator from Ohio. So instead of saying things that are wrong and actually causing the hospitals, the schools, the government buildings to be evacuated because of bomb threats, because of the cats and dogs thing, why not actually be constructive in helping to better integrate them into the community? Because there are a lot of employers there who say that the Haitian workers are helping fill jobs that they need desperately filled.
Now listen to the framing on this. Why don't you help them better integrate into the community, right? This is overt liberal framing of this question, as if this is something that we should be doing. We should be helping them integrate. No, we should not be helping them integrate. That's the problem, Dana. That's the problem that people have. The fact is that that town does not have enough resources to allow them to integrate, and we shouldn't be trying to integrate them in the first place, okay? Because we should not be taking in all these migrants, especially ones that are trying to game the system, that are coming over here illegally, but trying to seek asylum, and therefore, oh, well, they're legal, so therefore you must take them in. No, I reject that. Our system is being taken advantage of. We're taking in everybody across the world because of asylum. You come to the border, you say, I'm hungry, right? I'm escaping political persecution. And they're going to take you in, right? And here's the thing. A lot of these Haitians didn't come directly from Haiti. They came from countries like Brazil, South America. And then they decided under the Biden administration, hey, let's go ahead and make our trek to America, right? They're going to let us in. Okay. And lo and behold, that's what they did. I mean, we watched them all come to the border just a couple years ago, right? You guys remember the fake story about how the Border Patrol agents were whipping the Haitians at the border, right? Turns out that wasn't true. Although the mainstream level media was boohoo-whining and crying about it, claiming that it was true, even though it was not true. And this is why you got to take what these people say with a grain of salt, because these are the same people that told you that the Venezuelan gang wasn't taking over the apartment in Colorado. They lied to you about that. They've been lying about this crisis the whole time, and now all of a sudden they want us to believe that all of these claims in Springfield aren't true, right? And I'm not saying that they are true. I'm just saying that the mainstream level media, they're not the arbiter of truth when it comes to this issue, right? They haven't shown us that they're willing to be truthful. What they've actually shown us is that they're willing to hide the truth on behalf of the Democrat Party. Now, this idea that J.D. Vance as a senator should be helping these Haitian migrants integrate into Springfield, again, is nonsense, right? The real question should be, why are we allowing this? Is it right to have 20,000 migrants from another country integrate into a small town? Okay, these people didn't vote for this. Well, who knows? Maybe some of them did, but I'm just saying a lot of these people didn't ask for this. They didn't want this, right? And to have something like this happen to their town and to justify it because, oh, well, these business owners, they need workers. Well, that brings up a whole lot of questions about, well, why is it that it's so hard to get the American people to work? Because I personally don't believe that we need the labor of illegal immigrants. We don't. Not when we have prisoners, teenagers, young males, and unemployed grown-ass men. As long as we have that in our country, why do we need the labor of illegal immigrants? We shouldn't need the labor of illegal immigrants when we have grown-ass men in this country that can do these jobs. So that's the real question we should be asking is, why is it that we don't have the men signing up to do these jobs? Why is it that we now live in a society where people think they're above doing these jobs and doing this work? And a lot of that has to do with the pandemic. Okay, the fact that we had so much money flowing around that people got used to not working. They got used to sitting on their ass, living off the government, and they decided, hey, I'm going to drop out of the labor force. I don't need to work, right? If I'm not going to get what I think I deserve, then therefore I'm not going to work. And this is something that has not gotten better, right? Even, moving past the pandemic, yeah, we still have a labor shortage in this country. And it's because people are just not willing to work anymore. They don't want to work, right? And that's a big problem. So when you have a country where you have grown-ass men that don't want to work, people that don't want to work, that should tell you something about the social safety net. That maybe, just maybe, we are incentivizing people not to work too much. And this is why people feel comfortable just not working, right? And not doing these jobs. But see, instead of trying to put the American people back to work to incentivize people to get a job, the Democrat solution is, no, let's just keep giving out handouts, right? So people don't have to work. And then also on top of that, we will import our labor here, okay, and allow them to work for slave wages, right? This is what we'll do. This is how we'll solve the problem instead of putting the American people back to work. That's the real conversation we should be having. But they don't want to have that conversation, right? They don't want to talk about that.
Dana, first of all, let me just respond to a couple of things that you said, but I want to start with something you said, which I think is frankly disgusting and is more appropriate for a Democratic propagandist than it is for an American journalist. There is nothing that I have said that has led to threats against these hospitals. These hospitals, the bomb threats and so forth, it's disgusting. The violence is disgusting. We condemn it. We condemn all violence.
Senator, this happened after you and President Trump were on the debate stage, said that cats and dogs were being eaten.
You asked a question, Dana, and I'm going to go ahead and answer it. What we have said is that this town has suffered terribly under the policies of Kamala Harris. Now, you just accused accused me of inciting violence against the community when all that I've done is surface the complaints of my constituents, people who are suffering because of Kamala Harris's policies. Are we not allowed to talk about these problems because some psychopaths are threatening violence? We can condemn the violence on the one hand, but also talk about the terrible consequences of Kamala Harris's open border on the other hand. Now, let me just fact check a couple of other things that you said, Dana, because it's important. You said that all of these migrants are in the country legally. They are in the country through what's called temporary protective status.
Right.
That is when Kamala Harris waved a magic amnesty wand, taking people and giving them legal status. That is not to say that they're here legally. That is a terrible indictment of her amnesty policies that have further opened the border and further caused terrible migration into this country.
You might not agree with the policy, and obviously you don't, which is totally fair and legitimate. There are policy disagreements all the time. But the fact is, it is the law because President Biden and Vice President Harris are. But I don't want to get.
But this is why I don't like how the GOP frames the illegal immigration conversation. This is why I keep trying to tell people when people keep saying, we don't need any new legislation. No, we do need new legislation when it comes to the border because the executive branch has too much power. The fact that the President of the United States can unilaterally decide that, hey, we're just going to allow these people into the country because we think that they're asylum seekers, right? And we're just going to allow them in, okay? And they have that much discretion over what happens at the border. No. Congress needs to actually do their damn jobs, right? This is the job of Congress. And we should not continue to allow the executive branch to subvert the laws of the land via the power to just be able to decide, hey, we're going to just let these people into the country, right? Even though they're coming here illegally, right? They're not properly vetted. Yeah, that's the issue. You have to take away that power because they shouldn't have the power to do this, okay? And that's why you need new legislation. You can't just fix it with executive orders because executive orders are Band-Aids, right? Executive orders are not laws. They're Band-Aids, okay? Congress has to pass laws. Now, it's up to the executive branch to execute, but what you're seeing here is that Biden is rolling back executive orders that Trump put in place. He's using his discretion that he's allowed to have by Congress to determine, hey, we can just take in as many illegals as we need because we need more workers, right? So let's just take in the illegals, right? Let's just import them, right, illegally. It's not good. It's not good.
I don't want to, frankly, go down this conversation about policy
Dana,
because
you made a point. You don't. I agree. You don't want to talk about policy.
No,
Dana,
what I want to talk about. What I want to talk about
instead of about the fact,
Senator,
that Kamala
it was
Harris,
your
Dana,
distraction.
Granted amnesty.
You were the one
who
started talking about eating dogs and cats.
Level.
You were the one who
Dana,
brought this
my
up.
constituents
The president
were the
said
ones
it to
who talked
60
about eating
million
dog and
people.
cats, and I talked about it because you were ignoring this community. My constituents talked about it.
Have you been
it is
to
my
Springfield?
responsibility to surface their concerns when the American media
Have you been to
ignores it.
Springfield?
Dana, I've been to Springfield probably 100 times in my life.
How about
I've taken my
recently,
children
since
to
you've
get
heard
ice
this?
cream at Young's Jersey Dairy.
Have you heard recently since you've gotten these calls?
Have I been in the last 4 days?
No,
I'm
talking
haven't been
about
in the last 4 days, but I've
since
talked
you've
to a lot
gotten
of
these
people
calls
in
from the
Springfield, Dana,
constituents.
and they're telling me this stuff is happening. Dana, would you like to ask me questions and then let me answer them, or would you like to debate me on these topics? I noticed that when you had Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, you gave them multiple choice answers to the questions that you asked, and you allowed them to answer the questions. I'm happy to be here to talk about policy, but if you're going to interrupt me every single time that I open my mouth, then why am I even doing this? So please ask a question, and I'd ask you to be polite enough to let me answer it.
Yes, I am, and I think that if Kamala Harris and Tim Walz were making unsubstantiated claims that had racist undertones about people eating dogs and cats, and they didn't answer the questions about that, then I would have similar interactions with them.
No, you wouldn't. No, you wouldn't. No, you wouldn't. You wouldn't press them at all. Like you didn't press Kamala Harris in that interview that you had. Okay, it was nothing but softball. You see the difference here? You see everybody can see the difference. Look how offended she got when he said that because she knows it's true. She knows that, yeah, I wouldn't press Kamala Harris like that because you had the opportunity to do so and you just allow her to say whatever. You didn't care. But when JD Vance comes on the show, all of a sudden now you want to be a journalist. But the overall point is this. Everybody can see that Dana Bash is a propagandist, right? With these types of interviews. Again, she would never interview a Democrat like this. Okay, everybody knows it. Everybody sees it. But furthermore, the more that they obsess over this story, again, the worse that it gets, right? Because the intended effect is to keep people from talking about it. This is why they say, oh, it's racist. This is why she didn't want to have a real conversation, which should be about resources. The fact that these 60,000 people have to deal with something they didn't sign up for. And this is not just a problem in Springfield. I did a story yesterday about it being a problem in Alabama, right? This is happening all across this country, okay? Liberal cities, now it's hitting rural America, and they're the same problems everywhere. Everywhere, they're the same problems, they're the same complaints, but the media has ignored it, right? Up until this point, because most of the stories I cover about the migrant crisis and people getting upset is in these liberal cities like Chicago, New York, DC, Boston, wherever, right? These stories were ignored by the mainstream liberal media. The mainstream liberal media didn't talk about it. Only the local news was talking about these stories, right? Now all of a sudden, when Trump said what he said on stage, now the media is covering the story, but they're not covering it the way that they should be covering it, which should be about the fact that you imported 20,000 migrants into a small town and what that means, right? Is this something we should be doing? No, they just accept it as, no, this is something we should be doing. And if you disagree with it, then you're a bigot. And that's just not going to work. It's not going to work. The more that the media boohoo whines and cries about this story, the more that people will look it up, and they may or may not believe some of the claims, but what they will see is that it is in fact true that they are importing illegals, okay, migrants from other countries into your small town, into your suburb. And we all remember how these liberals were all for illegal immigration until it actually affected them, right? They were totally fine with it when it was just happening in the red states. When the red states had to deal with it, oh, no big deal, you're a bigot, right? But again, now that it's happening everywhere in the country and everybody has to deal with it, now all of a sudden, people are realizing that, okay, my vote actually matters on this, right? This issue actually matters because it could happen to my small town. It could happen to my suburb. It could happen to my community. It could happen to my city. And that's what's happening. And I don't think the mainstream liberal media realizes. They don't even realize that their obsession with what Trump said is actually backfiring on them because they're inadvertently highlighting one of the biggest disasters of the Biden administration, the Kamala administration, which is their immigration policy. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.